Dzisiaj mam przyjemność poprowadzić panel dyskusyjny na temat franczyzy społecznej, w którym uczestnikami mamy dwóch gości zagranicznych. Jednym jest pan Richardson z European Social Franchising Network, drugim natomiast pan Thorkil Sonne, ASHOKA. Mamy również przedstawiciela Akademii Rozwoju Systemów Sieciowych, pana Andrzeja Krawczyka i jak również dzisiaj głos w dyskusji zabierze Piotr Krośniak, Program Narodów Zjednoczonych do spraw rozwoju. To, co jest ważne, jeżeli chodzi o franczyzę społeczną, można zauważyć, że dzisiaj będziemy chcieli Państwu przedstawić po pierwsze ten model franczyzy społecznej, porozmawiać, co to jest franczyza społeczna oraz zastanowić się, czy da ona nam szansę na to, aby właśnie rozwijać ekonomię społeczną w Polsce. Na początek poproszę pana Richardsona, aby przedstawił nam krótką prezentację na temat działalności European Social Franchising Network. Poproszę, Kif.
If you had a choice, how big would you like the social economy to be in Poland or your home country? Who of you, and if you can stand up when you're doing this, because we've done a lot of sitting today, would like it to be 5% of the economy of your country? That's the same size as it is probably in Britain. Anybody? 5%. Just 5%. Yeah, thank you. Who would like it to be 10%, which is about the size it is across the whole of Europe? No, no. Oh, 2 or 3. Thank you. And who of you would like it to be over 20%, which is a target we've kind of set ourselves in England? So that's 2 in every 10 people would work in the social economy or for social enterprises. So that's, oh, look, you're getting the hang of this now. I didn't think it was that difficult. So if we have this target of 20%, who of you think that the methods we have now are going to achieve that? And that's quite a radical change to our whole economy. And at a time when capitalism has failed us with the banking crisis, socialism and communism have also been seen to fail us, we've got a tremendous opportunity. Who thinks we could actually achieve that? Anyone? And that's the same conclusion I came to, and a number of other people, and perhaps Thorkil and other people, that really we need to start doing something in a different way, and we need to do things in a way that can lead to us really making an impact on our societies, both for the employment of disadvantaged people and really to improve our societies in general, so that it's not all led by the market and the profit motive. So I'm going to talk about social franchising because that's why in England we started to do that. And if you could just... So what is social franchising? It's got a social franchisor. I mean, it's very like commercial franchising in lots of ways. So there is a company like McDonald's who decides who is and isn't a franchisee, and who can join the network, if you like, and controls the brand and all those kinds of things. There needs to be social franchisees, and they're independent organisations. They're not owned or controlled, at least not ultimately, by the franchisor. They're independent. And independence is very important because that allows us to have an organisation that has scale and can operate together, but also benefit from local entrepreneurialism and can benefit from local accountability and local control and react to local activities. So then we also need to have a common brand. We need to have something that's recognisable that people can be part of. I'm part of Community Renewable Energy, so we have a core logo. There's other ones that use Comosi in Belgium uses the Kringlewinkle brand name, a whole range of brand names like that. And fundamentally, there has to be an interchange of knowledge, because that's what a social franchise is all about. It's about enabling people to start up businesses much more quickly, and not only start up more quickly, but enable people to start up a business who otherwise probably wouldn't be able to do it. To start up a new enterprise requires a high degree of entrepreneuriality. It requires an awful degree of confidence in yourself, and I suspect a degree of madness. And not everybody has those characteristics. So we need to make it easier for individuals to be entrepreneurial and set up their own business, because wherever you look, and I think from the presentations that were given this morning, Poland is a particular issue. It's a particular issue in the north of England where I come from. It's important that we get more people getting out there and starting up enterprises of all sorts, and for the sake of our economy and our societies. So if we move on, social franchising is a federation. It's a group of organisations working together. And I think this is one of the ways where it's different from a commercial franchise, in that normally the social franchise is owned by its member social the social franchise is owned by the franchisees, which is not usually the case in the commercial sector. So there's a shared vision and direction. So everybody controls the brand and the organisation, and they have a stake in it. It's a market-orientated growth mechanism. One of the reasons I felt social franchising was a good idea was I was fed up of people talking the talk about being able to set up social enterprises and set up businesses and failing abysmally. And I wanted to look at ways whereby if you didn't succeed in setting up enterprises, then you don't survive. So in the case of a social franchise, most social franchisees will be charged a fee by the social franchisor for what they do. And that is important, because that means that, if you like, in the case of community renewable energy, we do not charge communities for our services to set up a renewable energy system, but we do expect a share of the profits from the renewable energy system to pay for us and the work we've done as our payback, and then that pays for our ability to work with more communities. And if we don't set up renewable energy systems that make profits, we have no survival mechanism for the future. We're not there to survive off grants indefinitely. It's also, if you want to get very technical, a form of self-organisation. It's a way that people can work together without having a common leader. Now, for humans, that's a difficult concept. But for this little chap, it's the way he lives his or her life. I'm not sure. Can anybody sex that bird? Does anybody know what sex that is? I can't tell. That's the way he or she lives their lives every day. They don't have a leader who tells them that they're going to, if you could move on, form this flock and fly in a certain direction. They self-organise by using simple rules that guide the system. And social franchises have those simple rules, which is, in essence, that unless the franchisees make a profit, the social franchisor doesn't succeed. And everything because everybody's aligned to the same purpose, they have simple rules that guide the growth and development of the organisation. So like that flock of birds, there does not need to be a person at the top of it who makes all the decisions. And business and all organisations are finding that it is impossible, as we deal with increasing complexity, to have a single leader deciding what we all must do and enforcing that rules and regulations. And, you know, humans would find it impossible to organise that kind of flock structure and that way of working if we relied on one person telling us what to do. It's not possible. If we are going to do things very complicated, and we are doing that in the way we run our societies, we have got to be able to self-organise. And that's the lesson from nature, from all forms of nature. That's what happens. So we can move on. So what do we do? We're as I say, the European Social Franchising Network, and we've been developing a directory of social franchises, which you can find on our website, which looks at, we've now found, and I'll go into some research later about the number of social franchises and what some of them do. So we've got that. We've been doing this as part of the Better Future for the Social Economy learning network, which we heard about in the last session. We've been assessing the impact of social franchises, We've been developing a website, and we hope to do workshops with social franchises to help them improve what they do. So we're doing one in Antwerp shortly on finance, because that's a major issue for social franchises, and a great opportunity, I think, for organisations to find a cheap and easy way of investing in the social economy. So we can move on, please. So I said I'd tell you about the number of social franchises. This is a list of them. This is as accurate as we can be. As you all know, businesses do tend to come and go, but most of these have been here for a long time. The United Kingdom has by far the largest number, 36 social franchises, and I'm English, so maybe that partly accounts for that, but I don't think that's entirely the case. We do seem to have a large number, and some of them in the UK are quite well-known names, like the Big Issue or the Princess Royal Trust for Carers, which is quite a big organisation. The biggest one is probably Care and Share Associates, which is a home care organisation. We've also got renewable energy projects and a whole range of others. But the biggest ones are not in Britain at all. They're in Italy, where I think some of I don't have very much data on the ones in Italy, but some of them probably employing up to certainly thousands and maybe tens of thousands of people. But the biggest one that we know of, we've got detailed information on, is Camosi, who run the Kringelwinkel network and Energy Savers in Flanders, and they employ 3,800. At least that's what I was going to tell you. That's what they employed last year. This year their employment has increased to 4,500 people. So that's in a year a massive increase, and it shows you the capacity of social franchises to grow, and I'll come back to that later. And social franchises are found all over Europe, and also in Poland with Barker Foundation and the other places. So we can move on. So we've carried out research into 23 of the social franchises. 19 are actual social franchises, 4 are aspiring. That means that they're trying to become social franchises. And that's where the social franchises we researched came from, following a similar pattern to that slide I've just shown you. So we can just move on. And what do they do? The range of services and activities that they're involved in is mainly in the service sector. There was none of them really in the manufacturing sector that we could. There are some who do recycling, who do some work with wood and such like that, but that's on the edge of, I think, of a manufacturing sector. The rest were really in service sector, and I think quite interestingly in some of the major areas of concern for communities, like renewable energy, health and social care, reuse and recycling, and education. And they're also growth areas in terms of the economy. That's obviously where you're going to find social franchises that work, or any social enterprise or social economy organisation. I was amazed when we began to tot up the numbers of people involved in the social franchises that we'd identified, and it's probably over 7,000 people now in just those 23. And amazingly, 65% of their employees are disadvantaged. Now that's quite interesting, because in the United Kingdom, social enterprises and social franchises aren't necessarily about employing disadvantaged people. But even in the UK, they tend to employ quite a lot of people who've got mental health problems or other forms of problem. And they have a combined turnover of around 200 million euros, so not insignificant. And together they own and operate 324 separate organisations. And the pace of the growth has been very fast. 40% of social franchisors have been established since 2006. That's 5 years ago. So most of that establishment, those businesses that you've just seen, has happened in the last 5 years. 60% developed social franchise without external advice or support. They did it under their own guidance. And it's interesting that social franchising is an idea that's come about across Europe and with lots of different people thinking it up as a new way forward. And I think that's also quite exciting and quite a telling fact. 76% did receive funding to set up social franchises, and I think 57% of those of the money came from the European Social Fund. And I think this points to the fact that actually setting up a social franchise is an expensive and difficult business, and it's very difficult without some kickstart funding, if you like, to set up the social franchise in the first place, to be able to have the growth that I'm just going to try and show you. So this is CAP, a supermarket chain in Germany owned by social cooperatives and social workshops. This is one of the oldest social franchises, and I think it shows the potential of social franchising. Basically, once you've set up your original business and you've got a good, strong business to build upon, and you've developed your models for exchanging information, that's all difficult and time-consuming. And you can see that growth there is quite slow. And so they went from 3 to 6 supermarkets in their first year. That's actually quite fast compared to a lot of social franchises I know. They may set up 1 or 2 units, new social franchises, in their first 1 or 2 years of becoming a social franchise. But then you can see as time goes on, sorry, that's numbers, that's employment, so its numbers are slightly different, so I've got that confused. Apologies for that. Then you can see that as time goes on, and I think they actually started at 1 supermarket in the first year, sorry. And thereafter, in the last year that we had figures for, which is 2010, they set up 11 in a year. So that shows you from being quite hard work, they've got the systems operating, they've got the brand, the credibility that brings when they set up, and all the marketing strength and the buying strength of being part of a social franchise, which then allows very rapid exponential growth. And move on. And this is another social franchise that's just at the beginning of that growth curve, and he's explaining what it is that makes the difference between a social franchise. And that basically, and it took them 10 years, this is an organisation called My Time, which provides mental health counselling services. It took them 10 years to get the first business to work properly. And I work for Sunderland Home Care Associates, which has also developed a social franchise, and that also took maybe 12 years to establish so that it had 150 employees. But it takes them, what he's saying basically, all the things that they need to understand about winning contracts, which we've just been hearing about from the public sector, all those kinds of things. When you've worked that out, when you've worked out how to train counsellors, all the systems you need to run the organisation, it takes 12 months to set up a new organisation. So setting up a new business has gone from 10-year time frame to 1 year. And I think that's the kind of thing we need to be able to do if we're to grow the social economy at a more rapid pace than we have to. And I think what's exciting about social franchising is that there are organisations, there have been failures, and I can run through some of them if you want, but there have been a lot of successes, and a lot is showing that it is a fantastic way to grow the social economy. Thanks. So why do people do it? We were talking before about profit and social purpose, and really everybody who gets involved in the social economy basically does it for a social purpose, or to grow, or they got involved in it because they wanted to set up something that would grow much more rapidly, to grow the enterprise, to develop their business. It's about empowering the people they work with and employment for disadvantaged people. Thanks. And there you have 2 quotes from social franchises about the reasons they have about creating the maximum number of paid jobs for people with disabilities, and to be able to negotiate as an equal partner with the government, or government and railway companies about gathering and sharing know-how between the different companies and sharing product development. They're all the benefits you can have from a social franchise. And it's interesting, in the UK, there's a big issue about the government, even under David Cameron, is very keen to involve the social enterprises in the running of our health service. And just yesterday there was an announcement that a quite large nurses organisation had failed to win a £500 million contract when it was in competition with an organisation set up by Richard Branson and the Virgin Group. And that was fundamentally because they couldn't offer their staff the pensions and so on because of their size and scale that Virgin could offer their staff. And the only way I think effectively the social economy is ever going to be able to compete with those kinds of things is by collaborating and working together. My main area is renewable energy, and I'm conscious that in the UK we've not done very well on developing renewable energy, and our communities have done particularly badly, even though there's lots of enthusiasm. And one of the main reasons for that is because every time we set up a wind turbine or a hydroelectric scheme or whatever, we try and reinvent the wheel. Everybody starts off from scratch, and you just cannot compete with the private sector or even the public sector if every time you are setting up a business you are doing it from scratch. It does work, obviously, because we wouldn't be here at all if it didn't work, but if we really want to compete we have to find other ways, and social franchising may not be the only way. There may well be others, but we have to think about that. Thanks. In terms of support needed, this is the kinds of things social franchises wanted. They wanted to be able to talk to each other, basically, and market and promote what they do, and access to finance. And we're trying to address some of these issues at the European Social Franchising Network. So we have a conference on the 18th of October in London. We're also having a workshop on finance, about looking at not just grants, but also equity investments, which is a very difficult thing in the social economy, and also loans and other means of growing the social economy. Thanks. Recently in Genoa we had an expert seminar of social franchises that there were 15 participants at, 12 social franchises, and key success factors for that they identified for a social franchise. These are the things you need to look at if you want to set up a social franchise, or if you're thinking of taking on a social franchise. It's firstly, you need a proven and replicable business model. Some of the earlier failures in the UK came about because the original business that was being franchised did not have the capacity or the resources to deal with setting up its offspring, if you like, the franchisees. You've got to have sustainability built into the business model. You have to think about how you're going to generate your income from your franchisees in the long term. It has to be rooted in local economies. This is where the local comes in. The social franchising is a way of combining the local with the global. It has to be adequately resourced to develop, and you need the money. Setting up a social franchise is not a cheap option, perhaps. I don't know if that's been your experience, Thorkil. And you need a clear mission, and you need, we heard Eunice talk this morning about people setting up social enterprises because they're doing it for the good of people. Loath as I am to disagree with such a luminary and visionary as him, I don't think it's about that. A good social enterprise works on mutuality. That means that everybody involved has got a vested interest in the success of the organisation. That could be financial, and most often is, but they've got to have that, because if it isn't, I can't work on social franchises if my children are starving. That is not possible. We all have to get something out of it, but we have to, the trick is to ensure that it benefits the whole community, rather than with the private sector, just those that own the business, or potentially so. So, if we just, and this is what they said they needed. They needed to work together to promote proven success models, and benchmarking was a key issue, about understanding how you identified which franchises were being successful and which weren't, because a franchise is as good as its weakest link, its weakest franchisor. That everybody has to be kept up to a certain standard, because the brand name is very important, and if that brand name gets dirtied or corrupted, then everybody suffers. And can facilitate rapid growth and employment of disadvantaged people. So I think that's it. This is our website. It's www.socialfranchising.coop. If you want to have a look at it. I've got some leaflets here that have some information on. We've got a conference on the 18th of October in London. If any of you are able to go to that, we'd be very glad to see you. We've got about 120 people coming to that so far, so we haven't got many places left. And I hope that gives you an understanding of what social franchising is and the kind of impact it could potentially have. We are really at the very early stages of making this happen, and it's perhaps not surprising that it's predominantly dominated by countries of old Europe, if you like, at the minute, because we've had the opportunity to be working at this for longer. But I hope that countries in Europe, if you like, can begin to learn lessons from what we've achieved and perhaps can piggyback on us and move forward at a faster pace than we have in the past through using this. Thank you very much.
Bardzo dziękuję KIF za, mam nadzieję, bardzo taką wzbogacającą do dyskusji prezentację, w jaki sposób franczyza społeczna powinna być rozumiana. Jako że jednym z wyzwań, które zostało tutaj powiedziane, jest dzielenie się najlepszymi praktykami i promowanie już sprawdzonych modeli, ja pozwolę sobie poprosić pana Thorkila Sonne, aby przedstawił nam prezentację na temat licencja na przedsiębiorstwo społeczne, przykład specjalisterne. Poproszę.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the invitation to come here. I've been to Poland maybe five times, but it's the first time in Lublin. I was here yesterday also taking part in a workshop arranged by FISE and ASHOKA. And I can tell you there are 4 great ideas for new social innovations coming up tomorrow for you to discuss. I would like to tell you about our way of licensing social business, tell you about our experiences from the Specialisterne case. I would like to tell you about the idea of why I got started, how the idea grew so much that I was adopted in the ASHOKA network. ASHOKA is a global organization of social entrepreneurs with a change-making potential. There are 3,000 worldwide basis. There are 70 in Poland. There are 2 in Denmark. So I think Poland is a very good country for social entrepreneurship. I'm taking part of the top 1% most ready for globalization in the ASHOKA network. I'll tell you about the proven case we have in Denmark, where we turn a disability into special abilities for people on the autistic spectrum. And I'll tell you about how I became an unreasonable man, claiming that I want to help 1 million people with autism and similar challenges to get a meaningful and productive job. And I'll also tell you about our ideas for how to localize this concept, and in particular our plans for Poland, where I hope that we can have some interaction afterwards. My story started 11 years ago when my younger son, Lars, was diagnosed with autism. As a parent, it's a devastating experience that someone tells you that one of your children actually has a disability. And we found out that our society is actually very brutal to people who do not fit in. Like if you have autism, even though you have a lot of good skills, you will be the subject of bullying at school, or already when you start in the kindergarten. You will be rejected by the labor market because they only seek people who are good team players, who are flexible, who are good at managing stress, who are good at selling themselves. There's not room for people who do not fill these social requirements, even they may be very, very good and may be very beneficial for the company. Also, it's a big problem that it's very hard for parents to understand their child, understand how to support a child that is being rejected by all the surroundings. It's costly for society. About 90% of people on the autistic spectrum are unemployed. That's a lot. There may be 1% of the population that will fit with the characteristics of autism. So for Poland, there may be 400,000 people in your society. Most of them do not have a diagnosis, but about 1% would fit with the characteristics of autism. So that's a huge use potential, but it's also a huge use cost to society if we continue to keep them out of the labor market, to pay them for not doing anything, to reduce the quality of life day by rejecting them. My wife and I thought about the future for our son, and we would love if he would be respected for the special personality he is, and be recognized or appreciated for the skills he could contribute with. He's a very bright guy, but he doesn't have friends. So what will happen when my wife and I pass away one day? What would be a good life for Lars? We thought that if we could provide a job, meaningful and productive, where he would be respected and appreciated, then we could pass away with a good conscience one day. I learned that in Denmark we like to put labels on people who do not fit into the standard expectations on how a good citizen should be. We have hundreds of labels, but we try to see beyond the labels. We try to see the specialist people behind the labels. These people are some of our employees today in Specialisterne. Lovely people. Many of them have up to 4 different diagnoses. So at some point of time, it doesn't make sense anymore to know the person by the diagnosis. We have to look beyond. We have to find the specialist people beyond the labels. One of them has been unemployed for 24 years and 11 months. Now he works for us and does a great job. That's really beneficial for society, but that's not what's driving us. What's driving us is to see the joy of work, the joy of life, quality, and to think of all the people in the world that we could help if we are good at disseminating our knowledge globally. There are some characteristics of people with autism. It's a little difficult for me because it's only in Polish, but they are very good at concentrating. They have a passion for details. Where others see the devil in the details, people on the autistic spectrum, they love tasks where they have to make sure that all the details are in order. They have a very structured mind, way of thinking, way of acting. They're very loyal. They are very honest. They say what they mean and mean what they say. They don't know how to have hidden agendas. That's actually wonderful employees to have. They have a lot of strengths, but they also are very vulnerable. So many of them cannot work full work hours. Many have sensory issues where we have to take care of. If sounds can disturb them, then we have to protect them from too much sound. That can be managed. We have to set up a work environment where they can feel comfortable. Many of them have depressions because it is such a difficult life when you all your life have been kind of looked down upon. But the good thing is that the strengths are needed by the corporate sector and the weaknesses can be managed, that can be planned and managed for. So there's no reason why we shouldn't get these people on board in the corporate sector. They do not fit in, but actually this is what the corporate sector will need. In the industry phase, it was all about having employees who fitted in, so you could replace them and have a production line without any new things happening. But in a market-based or in a knowledge-based market economy, where everything can be copied cheaper somewhere in the world, it's all about innovation. And a very big part of innovation comes from the edges of normality, from people who do not fit in. So the corporate sector actually needs a lot of people who do not fit in. And we try to provide a management model that will make the big corporate sectors able to manage people who do not fit in today, so that they can make the most out of diversity and get ahead on innovation in a global market economy. Specialisterne is a for-profit company. It's owned by a not-for-profit foundation, Specialist People Foundation. I sold the for-profit Specialisterne for 50 zlotys, no, 0.50 zlotys, with 60 employees without debt to the not-for-profit foundation in order to spread this concept globally. I've been approached by people from 60 countries who want us to help in their country. And a not-for-profit organization will be the best platform to do that. So we want to go global. We want to help people on the autistic spectrum on a global scale. But we also want to help all the other people who meet the same challenges. There are even more people who have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, than there are people with autism. But it's not very sexy to seek a job and say, I'm really good at this and this, but you should know I have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder in combination with autism spectrum disorder. This is not really selling. We have to define the personal business profile and tell the employer what it takes for them to make the most out of these people's competences. So Specialisterne provides business services like software testing, quality control, data entries, where we can use the strong memories, the structured mind, the passion for details, the pride of making perfect results also through repetitive tasks. We have a 5-month assessment and training program paid for by the municipalities in order to get the people up to an entry level into the corporate sector. They know what they are not good at. We have to find the motivation and work with them on what they are good at in order to give them a fair chance to enter the labor market. And we also have started a 3-year youth education where we help these people going from being young to being adult. So all in all, there are about 100 people in our office. About 80 of them have a diagnosis within the autistic spectrum, and about 20 are not diagnosed. They are staff and managers. So there are 4 times as many people on the autistic spectrum as not on the autistic spectrum. That makes our office kind of a free space where the people on the autistic spectrum are the normal ones for the first time in their life. And that means a lot to people. We have corporate customers, you know some of them. We are challenging the corporate sector in Denmark. We do not want to compete on cheap prices. We want to have market rate prices because we want to compete on the value of what we're doing. It's a difficult sale, but these companies actually appreciate our approach. They are willing to pay for quality. We have started on a journey to change the whole world, not just Denmark. We have a vision to make societies globally respect and accommodate what we call specialist people as worthy and valuable citizens. We've set the goal of enabling 1 million jobs It's a good goal, it's easy to remember, and it's challenging, so you have to think differently in order to achieve this goal. We'll do it by being able to make people feel wanted and giving the opportunity to excel in the workplace. And the way we'll do it is based on values like respect, accommodation. They should not just fit into a corporate company. The corporate company should also fit with the needs of specialist people. And values like clarity and accessibility. So we're building up a capacity in our organization, and we are growing a global network of stakeholders, partners. That's also why I travel so much, why I'm here. And behind all of this, we want to grow a knowledge base. We want to roll out our licensees in a collaborative and knowledge share license network. We want to replicate the specialist and the concept as showcases all over the world. But where we go from thousands to the million will be if we can make the corporate sector interested in learning from us, learning our management model, and employing and managing people, specialist people themselves. That's where we stop building bridges, and that's where we remove the divide between specialist people and the labor market. So we have 7 years of experiences from Denmark. Deloitte has helped us to write processes of everything we do in our assessment and business and HR department. We have started up in Scotland, and we are in the planning phase for a number of countries. We have started up in Iceland. We have funding to start up in Poland. And we have done a feasibility study, and it's very likely that next year we'll start up in maybe Krakow, maybe Warsaw. We'll start up very soon in Switzerland, and we're working on Germany, Ireland, UK, and Spain. And then we have big ambitions for the US. And yeah, all the other countries come along. We know that people on the autistic spectrum are the same all over the world. We know that the needs in the business sector, thanks to globalization, are about the same. But we also know that there's a big difference between the Danish and the Polish welfare system. And in any welfare system will differ. There's difference in how much social compensation, culture, religion, tradition. But we can plan for that. So we have a planning model where we'll do a feasibility study. And if that says, yes, this is a good place to start after assessing the autism community, the welfare system, the business needs, and what kind of legal construction, what kind of partners should be involved if we start up here, then we'll go to the next phase of trying to find a local partner which will own a license and make a business plan, and then we'll end up with a license agreement. They'll pay for a license agreement and give an annual contribution to our Specialist People Foundation, and then also pay for consultancy needed beyond what's included in the license fee and the membership fee. So if we are very clever, we can grow this on a global scale. It takes a couple of months to do a feasibility study. It takes a couple of months to do the business plan. But I think there's a real good chance that when this conference takes place next year again, there will be a specialist on the entity operating in Poland. Thank you.
Dziękuję bardzo. To był przykład gotowego modelu franczyzy społecznej, który mam nadzieję, że wkrótce może i w Polsce zostanie wdrożony. Jak widać, od tego roku zaczyna się licencjonowanie, jeżeli dobrze zrozumiałam. Tak? Od tego roku będą dawane licencje specjalisterne. Tak, Thorkil? Innym podmiotom zainteresowanym, może w następnym, ale model już jest praktycznie opracowany. Teraz wracając do naszej dyskusji poświęconej franczyzie społecznej, chciałabym również poprosić pozostałych naszych panelistów o to, aby też powiedzieli, jak oni rozumieją pojęcie franczyza społeczna, czym ona dla nich jest. Może ja zacznę po mojej prawej stronie od Piotrka Krośniaka.
Witam Państwa ponownie. Znaczy dla nas i dla mnie franczyza jest takim rozwiązaniem, gdzie my jakiś fajny pomysł, dobry pomysł możemy upowszechniać. Bo tak jak już tu było powiedziane, w sektorze ekonomii społecznej często brakuje tych pomysłów. Dużo przedsiębiorstw działa w bardzo konkurencyjnych branżach. Także franczyza jest takim rozwiązaniem, gdzie my możemy upowszechnić coś, co się sprawdziło i co jest przedsięwzięciem dochodowym. My pracujemy na bazie naszej kawiarni, księgarni Spółdzielnia, która jest tutaj zresztą w Lublinie, wspólnie z Miejskim Ośrodkiem Pomocy Rodzinie i Spółdzielnią Socjalną 4 pory roku, którą zakładaliśmy. I franczyza, kończymy w zasadzie model wspólnie tutaj z Akademią Rozwoju Systemów. Taki prawdziwy biznesowy model, nie społeczny. Będzie to pełny model, tak jak w przypadku każdego innego przedsiębiorstwa, które wykorzystuje franczyzę społeczną. Takie jest nasze założenie. I chcemy tą ideę upowszechnić. Wykorzystania ciekawej działalności w formie kawiarni, księgarni w innych miejscach w Polsce i też może kiedyś na świecie. My zaczynamy. Najwięcej czasu zabrało nam chyba zrozumienie, o co w tym wszystkim chodzi. I bardzo, że tak powiem, trzymamy kciuki za nasz model. Bardzo dużo nam Akademia pomaga w zrozumieniu, jak to można przeprowadzić i jak to powinno wyglądać. No bo my na wszystko patrzymy z tej perspektywy społecznej. Z perspektywy tych osób, które pracują w tym przedsiębiorstwie społecznym, z perspektywy tego, z jakimi one problemami przyszły do tego przedsiębiorstwa. No a żeby franczyza była udana, to przedsiębiorstwo musi być dochodowe. Także jeszcze raz podkreślę, że dla mnie franczyza to przede wszystkim taki nośnik dobrych praktyk, dobrych idei, które można przenosić dalej.
To teraz poproszę Andrzeja właśnie o kilka słów, jak on postrzega franczyzę społeczną, w którym kierunku powinna zmierzać w Polsce, jak on rozumie to pojęcie.
Trudno się wypowiadać na temat kierunku, w którym franczyza społeczna powinna zmierzać, bo tak naprawdę jest to w tej chwili raczkujący segment rynku. Ja zajmuję się franczyzą taką prawdziwą, komercyjną od powiedzmy już ponad 10 lat, a franczyza społeczna to jest temat na ostatnich kilku miesięcy tak naprawdę. I tak jak Piotr powiedział, na początku mieliśmy sporo problemów z tym, żeby zrozumieć, czym ma być ta franczyza społeczna. No, jak w każdej pracy trzeba zacząć od definicji. Ale już po jakimś czasie doszliśmy do tego, że tak naprawdę franczyza społeczna to jest taka sama franczyza jak każda inna komercyjna franczyza. Natomiast ma ona nawet trudniej niż taki komercyjny koncept biznesowy, bo franczyza społeczna z jednej strony musi być tak samo rentownym przedsięwzięciem, tak jak zresztą to było dzisiaj wcześniej powiedziane w prezentacji, musi być przedsięwzięciem rentownym i opartym o sprawdzony i zweryfikowany w praktyce rynkowej koncept biznesowy, a ta trudność dodatkowa w przypadku franczyzy społecznej polega na tym, że mamy jeszcze realizować sympatyczne cele społeczne i takie zwykłe, komercyjne franczyzy, no tego w tym przypadku obciążenia dla tego modelu biznesowego nie mają w sobie. Tak? Tam liczy się tylko zysk, a my mamy mieć nie tylko rentowny biznes, ale oprócz tego mamy realizować realizować szczytne cele. Do tej pory w Polsce parę prób było takiej franczyzy społecznej, ale bardziej to z naszego punktu widzenia ludzi, którzy zajmują się franczyzą jako taką, jako całym rynkiem, no były to ciekawe próby o charakterze nowinki, ciekawostki, wydarzenia takiego PR-owego, które gdzieś tam się pojawiły, ktoś o nich gdzieś napisał, powiedział, nakręcił jakiś ciekawy program, no i tyle o nich słyszano. I potem jak się próbowało po jakimś czasie dotrzeć do tego, co się z nimi dzieje, no to trudno było jakąkolwiek informację uzyskać. To zdaje się świadczyć o tym, że po prostu te biznesy gdzieś niestety umierały. W przypadku projektu tej tutaj lubelskiej kawiarni spółdzielni nie chcielibyśmy tego błędu popełnić i w tej chwili koncentrujemy się może nawet nie tyle na samej franczyzie, co na tym, żeby wypracować ten atrakcyjny i rentowny model biznesu. Jesteśmy dopiero po paru miesiącach pracy, więc dużo rzeczy jeszcze przed nami, ponieważ no nawet tutaj wcześniej w prezentacji też było powiedziane, że na rynkach tych zachodnich, które są rozwinięte, we franczyzę wchodziły przedsięwzięcia po 10 latach funkcjonowania na rynku i to jest akurat prawda, która też się potwierdza z rynku tego komercyjnego. Na zachodzie firmy zaczynają rozwój poprzez franczyzę dopiero po 10, 11, 12 latach funkcjonowania, kiedy rzeczywiście ten biznes jest okrzepnięty i wszystko jest w nim poukładane i jest wypracowana marka i jest wypracowane know-how, które można przekazywać franczyzobiorcom. No my jesteśmy na etapie tworzenia tego know-how, tworzenia marki. Mam nadzieję, że nie zajmie nam to 10 lat, że szybciej się z tym uwiniemy. Natomiast ciągle jesteśmy powiedzmy w środku pracy, ale wspólnymi siłami myślę, że rzeczywiście uda nam się stworzyć taki model, który rzeczywiście będzie potem mógł być pokazywany jako punkt odniesienia dla takiej rzetelnej, prawdziwej franczyzy społecznej w naszym kraju.
Kif, a jak ty rozumiesz franczyzę społeczną? Bo czytając wywiad z tobą na stronie ekonomia-społeczna.pl zauważyłam, że niekoniecznie franczyza społeczna musi być prowadzona przez osoby wykluczone. Może również być prowadzona przez inne podmioty, które mają do realizacji cel społeczny. Bardzo bym cię prosiła o podzielenie się twoim spostrzeżeniem, jeżeli chodzi o franczyzę społeczną. Proszę.
Well, in a way, this is a difference between United Kingdom and the rest of Europe, really. Odd man out of Europe, as we always are. We take the view that a social enterprise in general can have a social purpose which is other than the employment of disadvantaged people. So we include cooperatives, we have the cooperative group, which is very big. As a retail store company, we also have I'm part of Community Renewable Energy. We don't as yet employ disadvantaged people. We're there to ensure that society and communities benefit from renewable energy. So we just take a broad view on what can happen. But I think what's interesting is that even when you start from that perspective, because you are looking at the good of society, the triple bottom line as people often refer to it, they will even though their purpose is not to employ disadvantaged people, they will often do that anyway because that's all part of creating a better society. So, as I said at the outset, most of the social franchises do employ the kinds of levels of disadvantaged people that Thorkil's specialist people employ of around 65%, which is quite a high rate and quite a difficult thing to achieve.
To jeszcze poproszę o odpowiedź na to pytanie również Thorkila. Proszę, Thorkil, please. Czym jest dla ciebie franczyza społeczna?
Well, I'm not an expert. I'm just a doer. I don't normally call it social franchising. I call it a knowledge share and collaboration license because I cannot tell people how to do it. They have to take part in the planning of the localization of it. And it's very much what we can give is not to say how you should do, but give access to his 7 years of experiences, and we'll give you access to everything we have learned and a network of collaborative licensees who are willing to share their experiences with you.
Dobrze. I kolejne pytanie. Pozwolą panowie, że teraz odwrotna jakby będzie kolejność odpowiedzi. A jak myślicie, czy franczyza jest dobrym pomysłem na rozwój ekonomii społecznej w Polsce? Ja się pytam, czy w Polsce może ten model zadziałać i sprawdzić się?
Well, definitely, I think it's very, very important for the social field here to share knowledge and not to invent everything from scratch. I think there's a solution created somewhere in the world for every problem you can face. The problem is that we don't know where the solution is. But if we can get access to the experience of people who have done something similar before, that's of extreme value. And if we are good at this in franchising or other knowledge share concepts, then that will be very, very important for the whole area of social entrepreneurship, social businesses.
Well, you wouldn't expect me to say no, so I'm going to say yes. And I think one of the key things is about what I've learned really is that, as I say, I've been a bit involved in Sonne Home Care, which is our biggest social franchise, employing about 570 people. And the original, it set up Care and Share Associates to do that. And the person who set it up was constantly being visited by people asking them how they did it and what do you do. And with the best will in the world, they could only spend a few hours, just as Thorkil probably can only spend a few hours with everybody who wants to talk to him about his fantastic success. You cannot do it. And a few hours is not enough to pass on that knowledge and information. It cannot be done. So in a way, you're in that kind of hoping that people would just copy you. It's almost worse. It's the worst thing you can do, actually, because it takes up an awful lot of time of people that leads to nothing. So Sonne Home Care, I think there was maybe one of the people who came and visited them successfully set up a copy of what they did, and even that I think is a bit dubious about whether or not they did. Now, within the space of 3 years, they set up 5 copies of what they've done that are now successful, because they can concentrate the time and effort, because they know, this is where this word mutuality comes in, because Margaret and the people involved, my colleague Guy Turnbull, know that at the end of it they're going to get some income from it that justifies their time that they're putting into it. And we are running, in the end, businesses that have to make profits. You cannot give your time away for free, but you must try and pass on the knowledge in a way that's effective. Networking for networking's sake is never any use. You need to have a purpose and a reason for people coming together, and that has to, it can't just be that, you can't just give out the information because it's a good idea and expect it to work and to grow the social economy. There has to be a stronger relationship built up, really.
Dobrze, jeszcze raz zadam pytanie. Czy franczyza jest sposobem na rozwój ekonomii społecznej w Polsce i czy ma szansę na przyjęcie się? Mówiłeś przedtem, że były pewne próby, nie udały się, no teraz pracujemy nad kolejnym modelem i czy on ma szansę na właśnie tutaj wzmocnienie ekonomii społecznej, a co więcej też i na zakorzenienie się w polskich, na polskim rynku?
Franczyza może funkcjonować wszędzie tam, gdzie istnieje sprawdzony pomysł na biznes oparty o rzeczywiste know-how i rozpoznawalną markę, więc jeżeli tylko uda się w naszym kraju odnaleźć podmioty ekonomii społecznej, które takie wartości w sobie niosą, które rzeczywiście już funkcjonują na rynku od dłuższego czasu, prowadzą działalność z sukcesem, są rozpoznawalne, mają wyrobioną jakąś markę i przede wszystkim mają wypracowane know-how, które można przekazać w miarę tanim sumptem i w miarę szybko, to oczywiście tak. Więc jest pytanie tak naprawdę nie polega na tym, czy franczyza może w Polsce odnieść sukces, bo oczywiście franczyza społeczna oczywiście może odnieść ten sukces pod warunkiem, że są podmioty ekonomii społecznej, które niosą w sobie te wartości, które są niezbędne do tego, żeby ten sukces się wydarzył. I nawet jeżeli ich jeszcze w tej chwili nie ma albo o nich nie wiemy, to być może właśnie w tej chwili się tworzą, tak jak chociażby kawiarnia, księgarnia, spółdzielnia. Takich inicjatyw pewnie jest więcej. Ja o nich mogę nie wiedzieć, bo ja troszeczkę pochodzę z innego świata. My się zajmujemy franczyzą komercyjną na co dzień i cała tematyka ekonomii społecznej jest dla nas nowa, a w ogóle chyba w naszym kraju też dość nowa, ale jak najbardziej jest tutaj miejsce dla franczyzy społecznej i tak jak mówię, jest tylko pytanie, czy te podmioty już są, czy jeszcze musimy chwilkę zaczekać, żeby rzeczywiście ten sukces rynkowy odniosły i żeby można go było potem rozprzestrzeniać poprzez franczyzę.
Ja jeszcze bym dodał do tego, że ja cały czas też myślę o tym, jaki jest taka nasza specyfika tutaj w tym wszystkim. Bo franczyza, ta komercyjna jest taka bardzo, bardzo zglobalizowana, przynajmniej ja mam takie wrażenie, że to jednak wszystkie te modele są globalne. A w przypadku tej franczyzy społecznej myślę, że tu jest zaczyna się przynajmniej w naszym przypadku pojawiać pewna polska ciekawa bardzo specyfika, gdzie te przedsiębiorstwa, które myślę mogłyby z tego skorzystać, działają w takich naprawdę innowacyjny sposób w branżach, które są młode też i bardzo perspektywiczne oczywiście, ale właśnie to jest pewna specyfika, którą ja tu widzę. Także na pewno jest to świetny model do przenoszenia tych dobrych praktyk i liczymy na to, że wszyscy pójdą, że tak powiem, za nami, bo tych przedsiębiorstw społecznych, które odniosły sukces, bardzo często z uwagi na charyzmatycznego lidera albo liderkę, który ciągnie na swoich barkach, jest już kilka w Polsce i trzeba teraz sklonować tych liderów poprzez tą franczyzę, dając świetny model, sprawdzony, wsparcie, nie tylko samą księgę franczyzową, ale też te rzeczy, o których mówił tutaj pan Richardson, czyli doradztwo, wsparcie, takie trzymanie trochę za rękę w tym pierwszym okresie, pokazywanie, jak to działa. No i tutaj jest, myślę, też rola dla naszego projektu i wszystkich partnerów. No i liczymy, że tak jak samą tematykę ekonomii społecznej już niejako jesteśmy nasyceni, to teraz w kolejnym okresie te tematy takie jak franczyza społeczna, jak klauzule społeczne, że to będzie główny kierunek wsparcia dla systemu ekonomii społecznej. Dziękuję.
Już czas nasz dobiega końca, ale ja pozwolę sobie już na zakończenie zadać jeszcze ostatnie pytanie tylko do naszych tutaj wszystkich prelegentów. Jakiego rodzaju przedsięwzięcia uważają, że mają największy potencjał do tego, aby zostać opisane, czy to w formule franczyzy społecznej, jako model franczyzy społecznej, czy to jak bardzo pięknie powiedział Thorkil, collaborative license właśnie, żeby można było dawać takim przedsięwzięciom. To taka ostatnie po prostu panów tutaj przemyślenia. Jakiego rodzaju właśnie usługi czy produkty mogłyby być opisane w formie modelu franczyzy społecznej i tak zaistnieć na naszym rynku?
That was a very difficult question. I think every solution where you really address a challenge that is bigger than a local context. You should think of how to document your knowledge, to seek partners, to seek stakeholders that can bring it to its maximum potential. And in order to do that, you have to be able to describe your knowledge, and you have to find a network of stakeholders you can cooperate with. And I think most challenges in the Polish and in any society actually has a dimension outside the local context. And if we become good at making a tradition that when you think of a solution, think out of the local context as well and see what kind of potential could it be, and then find a way to document and to engage with stakeholders based on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the key things is that for a social franchise to be successful, the original organisation has got to see some benefits from its model being replicated. That might be like in the case of specialist people, where you've got this goal of employing 1 million people with autism, or it may be like in Sunderland Home Care, where the founder had this goal of setting up, democratising, as she calls it, the home care service, or another person's doing childcare. He thinks it's a criminal sin, basically, that private people make private profit out of fostering children. So he's motivated by that. But there's also got to be more than that, I think. There's also got to be something in it that benefits the organisation. So with Sunderland, you know, with having more organisations has got to, franchisees has somehow got to benefit the original franchisor. It might be that in the case of my company, Renewable Energy, we can all club together to buy wind turbines at a much cheaper rate than we would if we were just dealing with individually, and get much better terms. We might then be able to develop services or develop markets, and I think you can see that with specialist people, the offer to IBM of being able to provide a service to them in not just Denmark but 10 countries makes the marketing offer of much stronger and better. So there has to be a clear, this is back again to this work, I'm sorry about, I keep banging on about it, but mutuality. There has to be something in it that benefits everybody in the whole process, so that everybody ends up going down the same roadway, if you like, and can be comfortable in going in that same direction, because you know, there's not somebody feeling, oh, why am I doing this? It's a waste of time. How does this help me? If you feel that way, you shouldn't be doing it. You've got to do it because in the end of it, you will be better. Your organisation will be better or stronger, and not just that you're helping other people. It's never enough, I don't think, in that regard. You've got to do it because it's helping you achieve what you want to achieve, really.
Z punktu widzenia branży czy sektorów, w których franczyza społeczna mogłaby się rozwijać, ja nie widzę żadnych ograniczeń. Proszę jedynie pamiętać o tym, że franczyza generalnie ma sens w tych działalnościach, które są w miarę nieskomplikowane i w miarę nie są kapitałochłonne. Bo jeżeli jakiś biznes oparty jest na jakiejś bardzo skomplikowanej wiedzy, która wymaga miesięcy szkoleń, czy też jest bardzo kapitałochłonny i wymaga dużych nakładów finansowych, no to wtedy franczyza w ogóle jako taka, niekoniecznie w ogóle franczyza społeczna, traci sens. Więc tak długo jak model biznesu, który ma być rozwijany poprzez franczyzę, jest dość prosty do powielenia i w miarę prosty do przekazania franczyzobiorcom, tam jest wszędzie miejsce na franczyzę i tak samo jest w przypadku franczyzy społecznej.
Ja myślę, że takimi sektorami są, bo ta nasza kawiarnia, księgarnia, ona działa w takim sektorze trochę czasu wolnego, jakby zagospodarowania czasu wolnego i to na pewno tutaj jest duży potencjał. Myślę, że też usługi szkoleniowe byłyby takim dobrym miejscem. No a poza tym no, mamy takie gwiazdy jak hotel pana Kogito. No i to jest też świetny model, który już wyrósł chyba na tyle, że byłby świetnym przykładem dla franczyzy społecznej i mógłby być upowszechniony myślę z sukcesem w wielu innych miejscach. na podstawie tego modelu, który wypracowali już sobie w Cogito od lat. I to są te główne sektory. My też gdzieś tam w głowie mamy sektor budownictwa naturalnego, nad którym dużo pracujemy i tych wszystkich rzeczy związanych z ekologią i zastanawiamy się, jak tutaj można by wykorzystać ten potencjał franczyzy. Także dużo na pewno jest możliwości, ale potrzebujemy też czasu, tak żeby wszystkie te przedsiębiorstwa się ugruntowały na rynku i można je było bez dużego ryzyka upowszechniać w innych miejscach.
Ja chciałabym tylko zakończyć, już jakby zostawić Państwa z myślą, że franczyza społeczna może być, tak naprawdę tutaj wszyscy potwierdzili, że może być skutecznym narzędziem do tego, aby rozwijać ekonomię społeczną, aby powielać, ale sprawdzone modele, tak, które będą mogły być również zakorzenione u nas na polskim rynku. Mam nadzieję, że wkrótce powstaną takie modele franczyzy społecznej, w szczególności, że tak jak już tutaj było mówione, są pewne wzory, które można by było powielić. Opracowanie modelu to na pewno wymaga dosyć dużo czasu, natomiast replikacja to już naprawdę krótki proces. Nie trzeba wszystkiego zaczynać od początku, bo już pewne przedsiębiorstwa tą drogę przeszły. Także chciałam podziękować dzisiejszym panelistom.